Hello, good morning to all of you. I am Dr. Anu, Assistant Professor in the Physiology Department. Today I will discuss about the nervous system. So, nervous system is divided into two parts, central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system, that is located in the center, that is it includes the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system, it includes all the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Other than the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, there is also another system known as autonomic nervous system. So, in the CNS we will discuss about the sensory, motor, and so for the sensory we use the word afferent, the nerve which carry the sensation from the different parts of the body to the brain is called afferent nerve. A for the afferent nerve. And then as we have received the sensation, different sensation, so for the perception of the sensation we need receptor, that is sensory receptor. So basically for the perception of the sensation we need receptor, and then this receptor will perceive the sensation, then it is carried by the afferent nerve to the brain, and then their processing will take place, and then the command will given from the brain to the different body parts with the help of nerve, efferent nerve. E is for the motor nerve, that is in which we have to do something. Motor means we have to do something. Okay, so today basically we will discuss about the sensory system. So for the sensory system we need receptor, afferent nerve, and then processing will take place in the brain. So what is receptor? Definition of the receptor. Sensory receptor are the specialized cells that receive stimuli from the external or internal environment and transduce these signals into neural signals. Means these receptors are receiving the stimuli and then convert this energy into neural signals. And then what is stimulus? A stimulus is a change of environment of sufficient intensity to evoke a response in an organism. So the stimuli can be external or internal. The stimuli which we receive, it can be from the outside and it can be from the inside, means from the inside of the body. So external stimuli, it may be mechanical, chemical, thermal, auditory or visual. So we will see the classification of receptor depending on the source of stimulus. The receptors is classified into extroreceptor, introreceptors and the telereceptors. This classification, which is based on the source of stimulus, is known as Sherrington's classification. Extroreceptor. Extro means the receptor which is present in the cutaneous server, means outside the body. So that is cutaneous receptor. It receives the sensation of pain, touch, temperature. Then enteroreceptor. Enteroreceptor means the receptor which is present inside the body. It includes chemoreceptor, baroreceptor, proprioceptors, osmoreceptors and the glucoreceptors. Then telereceptor. Telereceptors are the receptor which receives the stimuli from the distance, means from the distance, like visual receptor, then cochlear receptors, then olfactory receptors. Then another classification which based on the types of the stimulus energy. So it can be mechanoreceptor, then thermoreceptor. Thermoreceptor, it can be of two types, receptor for the cold and receptor for the warm. Then photoreceptor or electromagnetic receptors. For the photoreceptors, examples are the rods and cones of the retina which respond to the light stimuli. then chemoreceptors, then nociceptor. Nociceptors are for the pain. Then classification is based on the clinical or anatomical classification of the receptor. So superficial receptor, deep receptor and the visceral receptor comes under the anatomical classification of the receptor. Superficial receptor means which is present in the superficial area, that is in the skin and in the mucous membrane. And the deep receptor that is present deeply, that is present in the muscles, tendons, joints and the subcutaneous tissue. Then visceral receptor which is present in the visceral organ. Then coming to the next topic, that is sensory transduction. So sensory transduction, it refers to the phenomenon of transduction of environmental signals into neural signals by the receptors. So what are the steps of the sensory transductions? So first step is the arrival of the stimulus to the receptor. First what will happen, there will be arrival of the stimulus to the receptor. Then there will be production of the generator or receptor potential. We can also call generator potential and or receptor potential. And then there will be production of the action potential in the sensory nerve. So what are the three steps of sensory transduction? Arrival of stimulus to receptor, then production of the generator or receptor potential, and then production of the action potential in the sensory nerve. Then coming to the properties of the receptor potential. So what is the properties of the receptor potential? It has graded response. It does not obey all or none law. Means it graded response means the potential will differ upon the potential will depend on the magnitude of the stimulus. Okay, whether and action potential, it follows the all or none law. Means it either will excite or will not excite. For the excitation, it will need proper threshold energy. Then summation means addition. So two or more generator potential can be added together. Then refractory period. This receptor potential does not have the refractory period. Then local response. Local response means this receptor potential cannot be propagated. And then duration of the receptor potential. The duration of the receptor potential is more than the action potential. As we have discussed about the action potential, as action potential obeys the all or none law, it has the refractory period and its duration is low. But in the property of the receptor potential, it has graded response, summation, and refractory period. There is no refractory period, and local response. Then duration of the receptor potential is more than the action potential. Then the properties of the receptor. So specificity of the response. The particular specificity of the response means the particular receptor will respond to the particular type of the stimulus. Means if the visual receptor is present, then it will only respond to the light. Okay, and the pain receptor, nociceptor, it will respond to the painful stimuli. So there is a law known as law of adequate stimulus. Means adequate stimulation is need for the stimulation of the receptor. Then production of the receptor potential on stimulation. Once there is a stimulation of the receptor, there will be production of the receptor potential. Another is the adaptation. So what do you mean by adaptation? Adaptation means tendency to adapt. Okay, so depending upon the adaptation, there are two types of receptor, tonic receptor and the phagic receptor. So tonic receptor, these are slow and incompletely adapting receptor. These receptors keep on firing action potential continuously during stimulus application. Means whenever these receptors receive the stimulus, it will get excited and it will keep on firing. Okay? It will never get habituate or adapt to the stimuli. Such receptors are very important for our life as they keep the brain constantly apprised of its status of the body and its relation to its surrounding. For examples are the pain and the cold receptor. These are the example of tonic receptor. If we get adapt to the pain stimuli, what will happen? It will cause damage to ourselves. So these receptors are very important for our life as these receptors are slowly adapting receptor. So if there is a painful stimuli, these receptors will keep on firing. And other examples of the tonic receptors are baroreceptors, chemoreceptors. So baroreceptor detects the change in the pressure of the BP. So whether there is a small change or big change, it will always respond, baroreceptor, to maintain the BP in the normal range. Then phagic receptor. So phagic receptors are rapidly adapting receptor which fire action potential at progressively decreasing rate during stimulus application. So these transmit signals only when the stimulus strength is changed, and this receptor potential in them is short and decays rapidly. So examples of the phagic receptors are Meissner corpuscle, Pacinian corpuscle, and the olfactory receptor. As we have seen, if there is a smell present in this room, after some time we will get habituated to it. We will get adapt to it. So these are the examples of the phagic receptor, as these are rapidly adapting receptor. So in the rapidly adapting receptors comes olfactory receptor, receptor for the smell, and Meissner's corpuscle and the Pacinian corpuscle. Then effect of strength of the stimuli. So another property of the receptors is effect of strength of stimuli. So receptor potential which develop on stimulation of the receptor will depend on the strength of the stimulus. So there is a law called known as Weber-Fechner law. It is a very important law which says that during the stimulation of receptor, if the response given by the receptor is to be double, the strength of the stimulus must be increased 10 times. Okay. Then coming to the effect of velocity of stimulus. Then projection. Another property is projection. When any part of sensory pathway is stimulated, there is a conscious sensation referred to the location of receptor, and it is known as law of projection. Then encoding. Recognition of types of sensation. As there is different type of sensation, we are able to distinguish that this sensation is of pain, this sensation is of cold, this is of warm, this is of itching. So we will see encoding. It includes 3 steps. Encoding of stimulus intensity by the frequency of action potential generated in the sensory fibers and by the number of recruitment of the sensory units. Thank you.